Good morning and welcome to the second day of the Graduate Career Workshop. So this is a series of workshops that we are aiming specifically for graduate students. And this is done in collaboration with the Graduate Student Association and with various other associations across the graduate body. So the purpose of this Graduate Career Workshop, which we are hoping will be an annual event every day, is to aim for students that want to work from their graduate point of view towards academics, be it for the industry, and also give them an opportunity to speak to alumni. So on November 7th, we had an event where we had faculty members who came in and told them about their life stories, about how they went from student to associate professor to a tenured professor. I mean, the entire life story of how to reach where you are. Hello. And today is the second step for those graduate students that are looking to reach out to the industry. And today we have with us from the SCDC, we have Ken Borer, Annie Duffy, and Brendan Johnson will soon be joining us. On November the 21st, we will have an alumni session, which needs to be pre-registered for. This is a meet and greet session where you can ask alumni directly about how they approached in the market, although you will learn a lot more from Ken himself. So I'll hand over the mic to Ken.
Well, actually, if it's okay, I'm not going to use the mic. I'm a mic person. I think Andy Duffy doesn't like one either. First off, again, my name is Ken Borer, and I'm one of the career counselors in the Steinbright Career Development Center. Who can tell me where we're located? Has anybody been to our office before? Okay, so where are we located? Why don't you tell the ones who haven't been?
32nd and Arch Street.
We're at 3201 Arch Street. We're one of the few buildings on campus that doesn't have a name, just a number. My title, as I said, I'm a career counselor. Some of you might know me as the graduate co-op coordinator also. So I wear, as they say, many hats. Today we're going to talk about job search, but we're going to only talk about if you're trying to find one at a company. Now again, many of you are master's, PhD students. You might be thinking about, well, maybe I'll get a job at a company, or maybe I want to work at a university. Well, the university job search is going to be quite a bit different. There are some similarities, but that's, again, not what we're really going to be talking about today. It's only going to be if you're looking for a job at a company. Now, just so I have an idea of the makeup of everybody here, how many of you are STEM students, just so I have an idea? Okay, the vet. Does everybody know? Okay, does everybody know what STEM stands for? Okay, well, say it loud. What's the first one?
Science.
Okay, next one. Okay. And I had a student just yesterday who told me for the E part, economics. Not spread that around. That is not true. Economics does not fit in STEM. First thing, let's just talk about if you're getting interviews or not. I'm assuming all of you are looking for jobs, right? How many are you are master's students? PhD? Okay, about half and half, I guess. So let's say that you're not getting interviews. A couple problems here. Maybe your resume. You should have definitely some people look at it, including somebody like myself or Andy. I'll go into resumes a little bit more in a future slide, but you definitely want somebody to look it over. Many times, people like myself who are very experienced looking at resumes, I can spot things immediately. Andy can too. Misspelling or formatting error, things like that. You always want somebody to look it over, and you always want somebody in your field to look it over too, because they might not necessarily always agree with what we say. And if enough people in your field tell you to do it a certain way, take that as fact. We talk about resumes as, in general, what looks the best overall. But some majors, certain items might be more important that you need to include in a different order. Make sure that you have a cover letter. Sometimes you might see a posting somewhere and they say, well, it's optional. That always include a cover letter. Make sure that somebody reads it. The big mistake with cover letters is starting too many sentences with I. I this, I was, I did not. That's tedious. I had somebody recently, 7 sentences in a row with I. You're not impressing any recruiter by doing that. Also remember too, a big mistake with cover letters is people either talk about their personal philosophy, what they hope to get out of a job, or experiences that don't match up to the position. No. You need to have an outline. Make sure that you're understanding the key points that they're looking for, and that's what you want to talk about. Also with cover letters is to make sure that you're always providing examples. So if they're looking for somebody with experience using Excel, just don't tell me that you've used Excel. You need to provide specific examples. Make sure that it's effective, which is basically what I just said, and make sure that you're not regurgitating, meaning providing exactly the same information that you will put on your resume. Now, let's say that you're getting interviews but not job offers. Well, it's obvious in a way you have problems with interviewing. You can do what is referred to as a practice or mock interview. Now, Andy in the last presentation is going to talk about interviewing, and he'll give you some tips, but especially if you haven't interviewed before, it's a good idea that you practice with somebody on our office, and we'll try to simulate as close as we possibly can, and we'll definitely give you some pointers to make sure that you're doing the best you can. And like most things, practice, practice, practice. For those international students where maybe English is not your native language, practice in English. Don't talk among your friends your native language. Big mistake that employers have with international students is their lack of communication skills. And make sure after the end of any interview, you should send a thank you. It's considered professional business etiquette. Sometimes a lot of people don't do it and they're discarded because of that. There was an example of a colleague in our office, and she had told me that her husband had interviewed 2 candidates. They liked them both equally. One sent a thank you letter, the other didn't. Choice was made. So you always want to do it. Now let's talk about how positions are filled. A lot of people don't know this. Generally they're filled 3 ways. And a good organization tries to promote internally first. That's why Drexel seniors who have done co-op here overall do quite well. The statistic is that 40% will be offered a position with a former co-op employer. That makes sense to me. The company has an opening, the student has done a good job, so why would you bring in an unknown person? Second is good old networking. Many of you have heard that term before, and I have a slide that goes into a little bit more detail about that. But it's the idea of this. I'm an accountant and I'm looking for one. Bill, you know anybody? Sure, Jamie used to work with me, is looking for a job. She was great, fantastic, faxing the resume. That's how most positions are filled these days. The last resort is to advertise. Most companies don't want to do it. It can be expensive, but more than that, it's time consuming. So, if you find a particular position posted, odds are they've tried other ways to find people. Most posted positions today will receive hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes. I was part of a search in our office about 3 months ago, and think about this for a moment. We received 168 resumes. I remember I had to go through each one. It's almost like winning the lottery just to get an interview. Now, one advice, just so you know, do not send the same resume for every opening. You need to customize your resume. Wouldn't it be awful if you're applying for a job, they're asking for a skill that you have, yet you didn't include it in your resume? You might be overlooked because of that. Okay, internal contacts and post outside. What is networking? Well, it's developing of contacts or exchanging of information with others in an informal network as to further a career. So basically it means you need to be talking to people in your field. Accountants know accountants, lawyers know lawyers. And I'll go into more suggestions in a little bit. But here's an important figure for me. Now some of the people I'm familiar with, I see them, they've met with me already. So please do not answer the next question. I know you're trying to show off and you know the knowledge, but this is for those who have not met with me before. What percentage of jobs are never listed anywhere? What do you think? Give me some. 80%. And how did you know that?
I just surfing the internet time to time.
Okay. How many think that's accurate? It's at least 80%. How many of you are surprised by that? Thank you. Some people aren't honest. The vast majority of positions aren't posted. Always keep that in mind. If you get nothing else out of my workshop today, I want you to remember that statistic, because if nothing else, it should shock the heck out of you. Wow, most of these jobs aren't listed. Well, that means you're going to need to create other strategies. Now, of course, it doesn't mean if you find a particular position posted that you don't apply. Of course you do, and you tailor your resume accordingly. But if you use that as your only way of looking for a job, you're probably going to be disappointed. Because as I said, it's highly competitive out there. I mean, we hear things all the time, and Andy, because he deals with a lot more employers than I do, he could probably give you better examples of how many for a posted position that some of these companies are getting. It's unbelievable, because most people use this as their only way of finding a job. And you can't, or you should. Okay, let's talk about the bad news. Since October of 2013, can anybody tell me what the unemployment rate is in the country, in the U.S.? What's the unemployment rate? Throw out some percentage.
7 point something, 7.7.
Okay, we got 7.7. What do you think? Is that pretty close? Is that low, high? How many think that's too high right now? It's lower than that. How many think? All right. How many are awake? I know it's 10 o'clock. Throw out some guesses. I got a guess of 7.7. You think it's higher? What do you think it is? 9. Ooh. Well, I can tell you it's not 9. If it was 9, we'd be crying right now, because that means students aren't getting any jobs. Now, it's not that high. Actually, I just checked, 7.3. So you're pretty close. Luckily, it's been going down a little bit. But what does 7.3, what does that actually tell you, though? It tells me a lot. What does it tell you?
They're roughly 1 out of every 10 people think
True, which means, well, what does it mean for you? As somebody who's looking for a job.
More competition.
Exactly, thank you. Who said that? That's it. It's more competition. 7.3, even though it's been slowly going down, think about that. 7.3% of, that's those who are looking. I mean, there's even worse statistics. They don't count people who stop looking, okay? They're not counted in those statistics. So in many ways, it can be higher than that. Now, in certain fields, of course, it's going to be better than others. Let's say that I'm smart in everything, which unfortunately I'm not. But if I was, what would I be majoring in right now if I was a student? What would be the easiest major to get a job? That is correct. That is correct. If I was doing everything, that's what I would be majoring in, because I know of an example of a student, undergrad, computer engineering. He had 3 co-ops with Lockheed Martin, and his GPA was 3.89. What do you think his starting, as an undergrad now, you guys are grad students, I know that. What do you think as an undergrad, he's probably starting, this was a couple years ago, what was his salary he was starting at?
19.
Nah, 50's too low. He'd be in the 80s with a signing bonus, probably, maybe even higher. So, like I said, I'm not even close to that. Maybe Andy is, but I'm not close. So the point here is that 7.3, there's a lot of competition, and you need to be aware of that. But you need to know these kind of statistics, but you also need to find out in your field what's going on.
I have a question too with that statistic. I don't really think that it accounts for people that have taken other jobs that aren't really doing, like I come from industry, but I'm a student now, so I'm technically not unemployed, but I'm not doing what I originally set out to do. So it's kind of, that's another point of competition for jobs that are
I mean,
coming
this
down.
is just really a base to start with. You know, many ways it's higher than that. If you're underemployed, if you're working part-time, it's not counting in those statistics either. So there's many factors involved. So really, the only point I'm trying to make with this, there's a lot of competition. And you need to understand that when you're looking for a job. Okay, focused resume. For me, the main purpose of the workshop today is on job search. But to me, resume is such an important part of what we're going to be talking about. When I'm working with students, and just so you know, unless a student can tell me an actual job title, you really can't conduct your search. You have to be focused. You have to know what you're trying to get into, because your resume needs to be focused according to the position that you're looking for. So if you want to be a financial analyst, my suggestion always when I'm doing resumes is that you need a job description of some sort to use as your guide. A job description should be viewed as an open book test. They're telling you what they want. Your job then is to transfer the information from the description to your resume, being truthful. If you're in the 80% or more range, I think you have a good shot of being selected for an interview. If, on the other hand, you're in the 40% range, that's not good. And if that's the case, you really have two options. Either you have to find a way to get the skills that you're lacking, or you have to switch and do something else. The example I use is that I'm a photographer. I got a part-time job as one a few years ago. When I was putting together that resume and talked about what I did working in the Career Center, do you believe I included anything about me being a career counselor? What do you think? How many think I did? How many think I didn't? Okay, this side of the room for some reason is asleep. This room is doing good. Okay, on this side of the room, why didn't I include it on my resume? Excuse me? Good, it's not relevant. Now, I failed to mention, I do photography in the office, but I probably do it no more than 5% of the time. If I put down what I do on a typical day, I wouldn't include it, and I also wouldn't have gotten that job. So what you want to avoid, it's referred to as a generic resume, listing everything that you've ever done. And as I said, that's not the purpose of a resume. There's an expression, jack of all trades, master of none. That gets nobody a job these days. So you need to make sure that you're very clear of the type of position that you want. Tell me what you think I was thinking when this person told me. I had a PhD in education a couple years ago, came in my office for a counseling appointment and says, what can I be doing with this degree? What do you think I was thinking? Oh boy. I should not be telling the student, especially a PhD in education, because if you're not aware, masters and PhDs, you now are starting to become experts in your field. That's why you're taking the kind of courses that you're taking. If you're computer science, for the most part, you're taking computer science courses. You're an expert. You're not like an undergrad where you're an educated person. So I'm thinking, we have problems here. I should not be telling this student what he can be doing with his degree. He should be telling me, this is what I want to do with my degree and I need help finding it. Does everybody see the difference? So again, as part of your search, make sure that you have an idea, what job do I want? When I'm doing resumes, and again, I need a volunteer. Actually, I need two. Can you help out, please? Just make sure everybody has an action verb list. What I'm passing out, when I'm working with resumes, and when you're creating your sentences, every sentence is going to start with a good, strong action verb. And the thing is this, you need to think about the field you're in, the appropriate verbs. Let's say I have two guys, and they're college students. One wants to work in business, the other wants to work in nonprofit. They're both doing exactly the same job. Even though that's the case, the sentences that they create should not be the same. The business student should be starting his sentences with verbs such as generated, sold, things like that. My nonprofit student, guided, advised, clarified. So the list I've given you breaks everything down into particular skills categories. So for my engineers, there's two main categories that should be used when you're putting your resume together. What should those two be? From the list. What skills categories? That's one. Technical is one. What's the other? Exactly. Research, for the most part. My business students, management and financial. Me as a counselor, helping in communication. Make sure that you understand your field, and when you're putting your resume together, that's it. So find a job description and tailor it according to that as best you can. You're shooting for 80%. Because when you're looking for a job, you have to be very clear these days, what do you want to do? Do not put an objective down, something like this. And tell me what this means to you. An entry-level job where I can use my communication skills to better make money. What does that mean? Well, I see some smiles, so it basically means, hey, tell me, what can I do? You're asking the recruiter or somebody else to figure that out for you. You need to be very clear. Now, if you're not sure, that's what I do as a career counselor. I help people become focused. That's the key word that we use. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you're not clear of what you want, the kind of position you're looking for, then you need to see me, and I'll tell you things what you need to do to get to that particular point. But that's imperative before you can start a search. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time finding a job. Because you have to be clear on what you want. You need to tailor your resume accordingly. Now, just so you know, in regards to resumes, we do resume reviews. I see them all the time. Andy does them also. We have drop-in times. You make an appointment, whatever. But now you know, if you're going to see me, I'm going to ask for that job description first, because I'm going to highlight the key points to see if you address them in your resume. I will even look at the action verbs. You should always view a job description as an open book test. They're telling you what they want. Your job is just to give it back to them being truthful. I did this with a student not too long ago. In the job description, it had the verb created 3 different times. The student didn't have it once on his resume. Duh, so what do you think I told the student he had to do? He had to come up with a sentence with created in it, right? Obviously, it's an important part of that job. The big mistakes that students do is they'll just put down what they do most of the time. Or they think, I have to put this down. They want to know that I'm well-rounded. Not really. They want to know, do you have the skills required for the position that you're applying for? That's what's important. Are you clear on that? Okay, let's move forward. Okay, one thing that you want to make sure that you're doing, and this is going to be true for all of your fields. Now, I'll get it out of the way now. There's a slide on this specifically, but let's talk about it. What is one way that you can find out about what's going on, the trends in your field? What's the best way to go about doing this? By joining what? Or
Professional association.
Thank you. What is a professional association?
A group of individuals that share common interests in your fields and all
Right.
that discuss it.
It's basically the people in the same field. You might have heard of the AMA, the American Medical Association. That's MDs getting together. It could be for accreditation purposes, to learn from each other, to attract people into the field. Every profession has a professional association. If you're not part of one now, join. But not just join, and I need for you to get off campus. Being on campus is not going to get you a job, probably. It's not what it's all about. So if you're part of the IEEE, they have a student chapter, which I like. You don't want to just do the student chapter. You want to attend meetings. You want to join committees, things like that. Now, in good economic times, and some days are more optimistic than others, if you're qualified and the jobs are available, how long do you think the average job search takes? What kind of range? What kind of time frame do you think we're talking about?
3 months.
That's the low. What's the high?
1 year.
Well, maybe not. Could be, depending. What I say is 3 to 9. 3 to 9 months is how much time probably it's going to take to find a job. Now, that's probably not true if you're computer science. If you have a 3.8 GPA, you have a little bit of experience, no. But if you're biomed, probably. But that's the point. You need to find out what's going on in your field. And the best way to do this is through your professional association. You're going to find out what's happening. You need to include that on your resume. You should have a section for professional association. It's clear of the field that you want to go into. It shows whoever's reading your resume, you know what you want. Also, you might want to find out, what would be a good example? Engineering. How many women engineers are here? Good. Do you know that there's a professional association called Women in Engineering? If I was a woman, and I'm an engineering student, that's when I'd be joining. Why? Because other women will help you out, and they know what it's like to be the minority kind of in a male-dominated field. They can give you some suggestions. They're always trying to encourage people to get into the field, things like that. If there's an Asian Women Engineering Association, I would look into that. Again, find the one that's most appropriate for you. There's a couple ways you can find them. One, I would speak with your academic advisor, faculty, possibly fellow students, possibly. Also, Brendan, our career librarian, there is something called the Encyclopedia, I always mess that up. Encyclopedia of Professions or something like that. But basically, when it was in book form, 2 volumes, each one is like 3 inches thick. But Brendan, our career librarian, can also show you. So that is something that all of you need to have on your resume. Think of it. If you know that over 80% of jobs aren't listed, where's the best place to go? Well, the professional association in your field, because if you go to a meeting and it's biomedical engineers, everybody there is a biomedical engineer. Isn't that great? Now you're starting to network. And the idea is you want to be active. Let's say, for example, you join and you're part of a committee. You get to know somebody personally because you're working on some sort of project together. That person, after a few months, realizes, wow, we have an opening in our organization. I think I'm going to recommend Bob here. Or maybe they know another company that's looking for somebody. So they contact and say, I know Bob. I've worked with him on this particular committee. I think he might be a good asset for your company. Remember, you know now the last resort is to advertise. Do you know that some employees, they're giving bonuses by their bosses to find people to come into the company? Because they don't want to be bothered writing a job description, reviewing resumes, interviewing candidates. That's the last thing that they want to do. Remember I said I was part of a search in our office. I had to, what did I do? I had to come up with, first off, the job description. I had to put together the telephone rating sheet. I had to be part of the interviews. I had to make my selections from 168 candidates. Then I had to be part of the actual interviews. I had to put together the rating sheet. I had to make my final choice, things like that. You think my other responsibilities were taken away from me when I was doing all this stuff? No. Now in higher ed, and when I'm talking about higher ed, you have to post. There's no other way around it. Even if they like somebody, they still have to post. Companies can't be bothered. If they can find somebody without having to go through all that rigmarole, that's what they prefer doing. So that's the idea. You have to start meeting people in your field. And you want to find out what's happening. If you're a biomed, are any biomed engineers here? Unfortunately, in New Jersey lately, hasn't been really good. There are 2 areas I heard. One's on the East Coast, one is on the West Coast for biomedical engineers, the best place to go. Anybody want to take a guess on the East Coast? What city is best for biomedical engineering? What I heard? I think somebody said it. Boston, that's true, that's what I heard. What about on the West Coast? Good, that's what I heard. San Diego. Now, I don't know if any of you want to go there. Both of those cities, both of them are very nice actually. One's kind of cold, but it's kind of cool city, and the other is definitely warm. But that's where the jobs are. So you have to know that kind of stuff. You can't be beating your head against the wall. If nothing's happening, then you have to be flexible. But you got to know this stuff. You need to know where the jobs are. Okay. I already touched on that about focusing your resume. Yeah, I like this. Just applying through an online job search doesn't do anything other than throw your resume into a pile with those of hundreds, if not thousands, of other job seekers. So as I said, do it, but don't rely on that as your only way. Career library, I'm not going to go into this really at all. I have it on here, but Brendan, our career librarian, actually, he's going to talk about all this stuff. And he's going to provide you some great resources. He does a great presentation. Let's talk about some things, though, that you can do immediately. We do have Dragon Jobs, which is, and hopefully all of you are familiar with this, which is on Drexel One. This is our online job posting site. So if an employer calls in and says we have a full-time, part-time, volunteer, that's where they're going to go to post. I know the person that activates the job every day, and she keeps telling me how busy she is, that she gets them down to 5, and then the next day 30 new ones are posted every day, things like that. So that's good. That means they like Drexel students, and this is something you should definitely be checking out regularly, at least once a week. Again, you make sure, of course, you include a cover letter and you customize both and your resume according to the position as close as you possibly can. I've known students that have gotten positions that way, so that is
just along those lines, I would work with the employers that are posting the jobs on Dragon Jobs. And the jobs are kept in real time, so you do want to check frequently. But the number one comment I get from employers, in a lot of cases, is, Andy, why are these students applying to my position? Their resume doesn't quite match up with what I'm looking for. So as Ken mentioned, he's talking about, making a unique, specific resume to a position. But I hear that at least once, if not 2 to 3 times a day from employers asking me, hey, Andy, some of these resumes look good, but don't quite look like a good fit. There's no cover letter, or the resume is not specific enough. So if you are looking at these that site, make sure to customize your resume to the job. They do want to see that, and it does pay off. And every day I have employers calling me, posting jobs, and interviewing students. So it's just one of the resources you should be using, not the only one, but it can be valuable.
Yeah, perfect example is that. Remember I said I was part of a job search in our office 3 months ago. We were looking for a job developer. A job developer is really a sales position in many ways. It's the idea of trying to find more full-time opportunities for graduating students like yourselves. Isn't that great? But a lot of people, they saw Steinbright Career Development Center. So we have a lot of career counselors that applied for the position. Now, they might have been great career counselors, but do you think they were considered for the position? No, we weren't looking for a career counselor. We were looking for a job developer. Who knows, they might have had some of the skills that were actually required for the position, but they didn't customize the resume. Were they considered? No, the resumes were thrown out. That's not what we were looking for. So always keep that in mind. And make sure you follow the directions, what they're looking for. If it says 1 page, then make sure it's a 1-page resume, things like that. And again, this thing is being updated. I'm amazed. I keep hearing about how many positions actually are posted there every day. It's amazing. They like Drexel students' employers, so always keep that in mind. Also through Dragon Jobs, you're going to find out about info sessions. Can anybody tell me what an info session is? I didn't say that. Enunciate that properly. What is an info session or a company presentation? You might have heard it referred to as that. Nobody's heard of that? What it means is that companies will come in. Many times it's around the career fairs when that's happening, or on campus recruiting when they physically come here to interview students. But a company presentation is when they come in and talk about their organization. They're really trying to promote how great that they are. Many times they will bring alums in, things like that. If you're interested in the company, you should definitely go. You'll find out things you didn't know before. Also, try to reach out to alums. Remember, they're familiar with Drexel, right? But they've also gone through the hiring process from that particular company, so they know the ins and outs. They might be able to give you some suggestions that you might not find anyplace else. Same thing when you go to the career fair. How many have been to one of our career fairs? Okay, it looks like most of you. I would be targeting alums. Now, in the old days, it used to be ribbons. Now they have buttons that says that they're an alum. I would start talking to them. Again, they're familiar with Drexel. They've gone through the hiring process as part of that company. They might be able to give you some insight that you might not be able to find anyplace else. They might be able to put in a good word for you, or maybe they'll pass your resume on to the appropriate person. Again, you never know. But you'll find a lot of this information on Dragon Jobs, so you definitely want to check this out regularly. Okay, internet. Most of you could probably tell me more information about this than I can. There are job search engines specifically in your field. Talk among your students, faculty, if they know particular sites that would be appropriate for your major. You want to also visit industry sites. Again, I'm not a big one on this stuff. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned or old, I don't know. To me, it's always better to meet people in person more so than online. But again, these are things that you should definitely be looking into. You also want to use all of the contacts and network that you have. Now, I know many of you are maybe not from the area, maybe not even from the country, but if you are, you want to let everybody know what you're trying to do, what you're looking for. And it could be your family doctor, lawyer, if you're involved in a church, priest, rabbi, minister, hopefully I kind of quote everybody there. But you want everybody to know what you're looking for. As I said earlier, you want to be active in your professional association. What I would recommend that you do, once you've decided on the one that you want to be part of, check out the regional chapter. There'll probably be a Philly or Middle Atlantic. Remember, we're the 5th largest market in the U.S. I would contact person directly, introduce yourself, explain that you're a student here at Drexel. Let that person know you want to be part of the association. Ask which committee would be best for me to join. If you're graduating or you're looking for a grad co-op job, whatever the case might be, let that person know. You never know what might happen. And here's something important. Informational interviews. Can anybody tell me what that term is? Well, let me try another way. How many people have heard of that term before? Informational interviews. Okay, it's extremes. I got one person here and one person here. That is the only ones that have heard of informational interviews. Okay, this is going to be important. An informational interview involves talking with people who are currently working in the field to get a better understanding of an occupation or industry and build a network of contacts in the field. As a career counselor, I recommend these two different ways. First, if I'm working with students, and let's say that they come in and say, I think I want to be an accountant. What I would have them do is first read and do research about that field as much as they possibly can. But nobody's going to get a true sense of any job until you talk to somebody who's actually doing it. So that's one. Two, this is imperative as part of a job search. If you submit your resume to a company and you're not selected for an interview, what have you actually learned from that experience? Nothing. You have no idea what the heck's going on. So it's the idea of talking to people in your field to find out what's going on. It is never asking for a job. That's not what it's about. If you do that, you're going to blow it. So if somebody ever comes back to you and says, you don't understand, we don't have any positions here, your response always should be, no, that's not the reason why I'm contacting you today. I'm a grad student at Drexel University. I'm exploring different career options. This is what I'm thinking about doing. I just have a few questions to ask you. I take no more than 15 minutes of your time. That kind of approach, you should have no problems talking to people. You need to find out what's going on. Let's go back to the biomedical engineering, what I was talking about earlier. Let's say that you're talking to some biomedical engineers in New Jersey, and you find out that they tell you, enough people in the field tell you that, for the most part, the type of position that you're looking for, it's not in Jersey, but it is in Boston and San Diego. And if enough people, 3 to 5, I believe, tell you that, in the field now, if an accountant tells you that, that's not necessarily fact. But if another biomedical engineer tells you that information, I take that as fact. Whether you like what they tell you or not, but at least you know that it's accurate. And that's the point you have to find out. The professional associations, that's why these could be valuable also. Get a directory. Contact some of them. Find out what's happening in your field before you can conduct a search. Personally, I've done over 50 of these in my career. Most people are willing to do them for 2 main reasons. The first, anybody who I know who is successful, somebody's helped them along the way. So this is kind of like payback. Second, people feel honored that you selected them. Most people like giving advice, and this allows them the opportunity to do it. You never ask for more than 15 minutes of their time, ever. Now, the majority of the ones that I've done have been in the 15 to 30 minute range. But I've been treated to lunch, given tours, but I can never assume that unless they tell me ahead of time. And again, I never take one person's opinion about anything. So at the end, I might say something like this. Thank you for taking the time to see me today, Mr. Bohr. Thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I learned a lot. I'm trying to get as many people's perspective in the field about this as possible. Would you happen to have some other contacts that I can speak with? Sure, John Smith, my golfing buddy, he'll talk to you. Fantastic. Would you happen to have his contact information? When I follow up with him, would it be okay to mention that we had spoken? Sure. Now you've tapped into your network. If you like what you hear, there are jobs available, and you're qualified, you need to continue to do these. Because somewhere along the line, you will find a job. You just don't know when. To me, finding a job in many ways is like a relationship. Right place, right time, and you got to be out there trying. But the point that I make when I'm talking to students all the time, I refer to it as an aggressive compared to a passive search. A passive search means you wait for an opening and apply. As I've said numerous times already, sure, you want to apply if you see something, but if you rely on that as your only way, you're probably going to be disappointed. An aggressive search is where you need to meet people in your field. One thing to keep in mind is human resources is not your friend. Their job is not to hire professional staff. Their job is to weed people out and pass on the ones that they like to the appropriate hiring manager. Brendan, our career librarian, who's back there now, who's talking next, he's going to show you how to research companies so you can find the people that you need to talk to. And this is imperative. When I was in grad school many years ago, I went to Georgia State, which is in Atlanta. And like Atlanta, Philly, well, I mean, like Philly, Atlanta has a lot of colleges. My goal was to meet every Career Center person in the city. I met most of them. And then I expanded outwards. I visited University of Tennessee, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Clemson. And my goal was to continue on until eventually I got a job. And I got a job through somebody that I had done an internship before and was a recommendation for me. Right place, right time. And that's what you got to do here. So these are imperative, what you need to do.
One other thing, I'll be talking about interviewing a little bit later, but one of the nice things about informational interviews, if you do go on an informational interview before the actual interview, you just get a wealth of information that can help you throughout the interview process. One of the things I used to always ask candidates when I interview them is, tell me what research you did. How did you get in front of me today? What homework did you do? And some people would say, I looked online, I read about you on a particular website. No, that was an okay answer, but a great answer was, well, I spoke to Bob Smith, the engineering director. I spoke to this person who's part of a professional association. He discussed this position in detail with me. And it gives you an opportunity to showcase to an employer that you've done your homework. You've done the kind of the necessary background to show you have an interest and desire in working at the company. Can't tell you how much those informational interviews can help you out if you conduct yourself in the right way in doing them. And to show that they do work, one of the companies I work for, I think I had a perfect track record of people doing an informational interview and at least making it to the next stage of the interview process. We probably interviewed 10 to 20 people for our positions that had conducted an informational interview. And I had always instructed any one of my managers, one of the instructions I had given them, if anyone ever requests an informational interview, if you can't do it, send it to me, I'll do the informational interview. And on top of that, if they were to conduct the informational interview, let me know as soon as it's done. Because I want to know about it. I want to know who's visiting. So I want to know who has these questions. And if it wasn't a good fit in their department, I will try to find them another job somewhere else. Because ironically, even though it's such an effective strategy, very few students and or applicants do informational interviews. I'm always surprised how many people do them. They are very effective. Again, I can't tell you how effective they are.
You can do an informational interview that leads to a job. You can't say you're looking for a job, then want an informational interview. But it also allows employers, for those people that they think might be a good fit, because they really understand why people want to do them also. Because if you do them the right way, you have an opportunity to make an impression with somebody, and you never know where that might lead. I did one once at a school, and somebody said, I don't know if you were aware, but we do have a position available in our center. You should consider applying. I did, and I got the job. Now, if I didn't make the impression, would they have told me about the opening? Of course not. That's the idea here. And you never know what might happen. So these are important. Again, make sure that you use the term informational interview, just not interview, because if you say interview, they think you're looking for a job. And if somebody doesn't have a job, there's no reason for them to talk to you. It doesn't mean, though, you can't get valuable information from that person and what's going on in the field. It also doesn't mean they might not have an opening in the future. 15 minutes, ask for other contacts, as I said. Research the company and dress professionally, because remember, you are trying to make an impression, and send a thank you. To me, this is always important. Considered professional etiquette, you always want to do that. You want to let them know that you appreciate them taking the time to meet with you. Okay, I've already touched on professional associations. I can't stress these enough. Again, this should be one of the first things that you need to do once you leave here today, if you're not part of one. Learn which one is going to be most appropriate in my field. Faculty and alums, hopefully that you're keeping in touch with your faculty. Many of them do research, that kind of stuff. They know about what's going on in their field. You can ask, possibly, for informational interview people who to speak with. They can also give you information about which professional associations to join, that kind of deal. Social networking, I'm not going to get into this too much. Just be careful what you put on. Facebook especially. Employers are checking, and there's too many examples of crazy things that are done. Now, the example I'm going to give you was before Facebook and all this stuff. I had a student at another university I worked at. She was hired by an accounting firm. And accounting firms have been and probably always will be conservative. Her manager that hired her needed to reach her, so she called her. And the student's voice message was, "I'm not available at the time. I'm in the shower with my boyfriend." She lost the job because of that. Now again, that was 20-something years ago. Well, I would have that same thought process on Facebook. If you have a wild time this past weekend and you have a picture of you being drunk or whatever, don't put it on. Because they do check these days. More so than ever.
Take that even a step further. My past experience, we did some background checking on people on Facebook and some other social media sites. They would just complain about the places they work. They complain about coworkers. They complain about the work that they were doing. Maybe it sounds fun to do, funny to do, not a big deal, but as a future employer, I see you complaining and bashing where you worked before. Guess what? You're kind of out of the pipeline as well. So yeah, just be cautious if you're using these sites. Sometimes things don't sound bad or sound negative. So if you have a negative attitude on the social media sites, it can get picked up on, and companies, as Ken mentioned, the HR personnel sometimes are just looking for reasons to screen you out. And having a negative personality, negative attitude on a social networking site can sometimes impact you, and you'll never know it, unfortunately. So just kind of be cautious as you're using it.
Yeah, especially if you're looking for a job. I wouldn't put anything on. I think it's always there too. You never know what might happen in the future. LinkedIn, I'm hoping everybody knows what that is. I'm not going to go into it too much, but make sure that you do have a profile. It's considered professional now that everybody who is a professional should have a LinkedIn page. So if you're not sure about that, maybe ask. Matter of fact, we're going to be creating a workshop about LinkedIn, how to have an appropriate site, what to include, not, that kind of thing. Kind of pictures, things like that. I'm not going to go through this.
As you're scrolling through that, one thing I will mention too, I'm not sure how Ken treats his network, but I have a pretty open network. So if anyone does want to potentially connect with me on LinkedIn, I normally accept those requests from your students, alum, that sort of thing. But just make sure when you reach out to somebody, you do it in a professional manner. LinkedIn's got a very generic kind of message, I think, when you try to connect with somebody. It says, I wish to connect with you, basically. Something very generic. I usually won't respond to that. No one's, you haven't taken a moment to, establish why you want to connect. But if you write a professional message like, Andy, I'm currently a student at Drexel University. I'm looking to make connections in the biomedical engineering field. I noticed you had some connections that might be able to help me out. I'm more than happy to connect with that person. They've taken a moment to actually write kind of a thoughtful message, make sense out of why they want to make that connection. And that's kind of how I treat my network, and a lot of other professionals I know kind of treat it the same way. So if you are using LinkedIn and you're having trouble actually having people accept your request to be connected, just make sure you're doing a step more than just that generic LinkedIn message. Try to put some, all kind of meat behind it. Put a reason why you're trying to connect. Make it make sense to the person. And hopefully they'll connect with you, or at least respond back to maybe why they're not going to connect with you.
Okay, the next couple of slides for my U.S. students, you can kind of maybe close your eyes or maybe get a drink or a cookie, things like that. This is going to be for international students briefly, because I'm amazed. See? Good for him. And you need to take a break, U.S. students. Okay. What I'm amazed with, and I've been at Drexel now, about 7 years. When I first arrived, international students were explaining to me all the work visas of what goes on. That has not been the case the last few years, and I'm puzzled why international students don't know the rules and regulations to work in the United States. You need to know this stuff, because somewhere along the line, you're probably going to have to explain it to an employer. I already gave you the example of STEM, where one of the international students, for the E, said economics. That is, whoa, that's definitely wrong. Okay, since all of you are going to be looking for a job coming out, I didn't include CPT, so we don't have to worry about that. What is OPT? Okay, what does it mean? Well, optional practical training. What does it allow you to do? Okay, let me try another approach. If I was to ask the international students here, to explain that to me, and I'm not going to, so please, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. I won't pick on you, but I just want, how many of you can tell me what that means? International students. What does OPT mean? Okay. Okay, put your hands down for a second. How many international students are in here?